Zhu Jing readily agrees, and as Mu Yan called out to him and asks her to travel to Xinjing, and along the way, she must obey whatever Zhang Yi asks. Anything he asks for. Zhu Jing said this order to Mu Yan with a deep meaning. Mu Yan seemed to have come to a realization and quietly clenched her fists, but when she looked at Zhang Yi again, she subconsciously straightened her originally non-existent chest. Zhang Yi was somewhat speechless in his heart, but he was too lazy to explain. The main reason why he had brought Mu Yan along was because her shadow space could carry people. This way, Zhang Yi would be able to bring his entire family along and head to Xinjing region together. This also avoided the risk of a sneak attack on Tianhai City in his absence. As for the people from the 3 major bases, Zhang Yi could only hope that they would have better luck, and it was impossible for him to care about so many people. Anyway, it was basically unlikely for Tianhai City to be attacked when he and his family were away. Deng Shintong was also very happy to learn that Zhang Yi had agreed to go to Xinjing, and pleasantly told Zhang Yi that after going there, he could take Zhang Yi around for a good stroll and enjoy the scenery of the northern country. Zhang Yi was noncommittal about this. More than those, I want to know the intelligence of several other regions. Can you get this for me? Deng Shintong scratched his head. It's easy to get the basic information, but I guess what you're most interested in is the epsilon intelligence of the several regions. That's classified. Zhang Yi shook his head. Give me as much as you have. It's better than nothing. He didn't want to delay, so he discussed with Zhu Zheng and Deng Shintong about the day to depart for Xinjing. The time Xinjing had set for them was 3 days later, so there was more time. Zhu Zheng said, "We'll depart from Blizzard City 3 days later, we'll arrange everything, just have you people come over." Zhang Yi nodded, "Then it's a deal." After saying that, he drove the car and left Blizzard City with Yang Xinxin, Flower, and the helper Mu Yan who had just come over. Mu Yan sat in the back row of the car, a little rushed and surprised inside. Zhang Yi taking the initiative to Zhu Jing showed that she was valuable to Zhang Yi. This made it possible for her to break away from Blizzard City and join amongst Zhang Yi's team. The car left Blizzard City all the way. Neither Zhang Yi nor Yang Xinxin spoke, but after leaving a certain range, Zhang Yi suddenly stopped the car in the middle of a snowy plain. He turned back and glanced at Mu Yan, with a full scrutiny in his eyes. "What did Zhu Jing tell you to do?" he asked indifferently. Mu Yan's hands on her knees immediately clenched as she straightened her back. "Commander Zhu was only instructing me to obey all the orders you proposed. Other than that, there is nothing more." Zhang Yi nodded, "That's right." He turned his head to Yang Xinxin. "Xinxin, do it." Before Mu Yan knew what Zhang Yi meant, she saw that behind Yang Xinxin, the Angel of Lust had already opened his bow and a red arrow aimed at her. Mu Yan had seen Yang Xinxin's ability, so she knew very well that this arrow did not have any lethality on people, but could make them fall into Yang Xinxin's slavery and obey all her orders. Mu Yan pursed her lips, knowing in her heart that this was the only way to gain Zhang Yi's trust, and that she had no qualifications to resist. Thus she very calmly accepted the arrow into her brow. Soon, she became Yang Xinxin's most loyal slave, looking at Yang Xinxin with a face full of fascination. Without the need for Zhang Yi to speak, Yang Xinxin began her interrogation of Mu Yan. "Tell me, what was the order Zhu Jing gave you for this operation?" "Follow Zhang Yi's side and completely obey all his orders." "Was that all the orders?" "It was." Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xinxin and smiled. "Zhu Jing isn't stupid, he knows what the consequences of offending me are." Even without Yang Xinxin's ability, Zhang Yi would have injected Mu Yan with a truth-spitting agent to verify her loyalty. Yang Xinxin nodded and continued to inquire, "Do you want to break away from Blizzard City?" Mu Yan nodded without any hesitation, "I want to." "Why?" "Because by staying, I'll definitely become the sustenance of Zhu Yu. I was born with that in mind, they told me that was my mission. But I don't want to die, I want to live." Yang Xinxin asked, "So the purpose of your approaching Zhang Yi was for this?" "Only Zhang Yi has the ability to protect me, so I want to follow him and get his protection." Yang Xinxin glanced at Zhang Yi, and suddenly a wave of mischief flowed out from among her eyes. She revealed a small tiger tooth and smiled wickedly. how do you evaluate Zhang Yi? Zhang Yi couldn't even help but freeze for a moment. Crikey, this question was really direct. He stared Mu Yan dead in the face, wanting to see exactly how this woman would evaluate him. That way, it would be possible to see her attitude towards Zhang Yi and whether or not she had the value to be included in the team. Mu Yan glanced at Zhang Yi and said calmly, intelligent, overly cautious, and powerful. In the midst of the post-apocalyptic world, it was a man worth relying on. Zhang Yi was all a bit fluttery. If he didn't believe in Yang Xinxin's ability, he would have even felt that Mu Yan was deliberately touting him. However, the smile at the corner of his mouth, if any, still revealed the smugness within him. No one dislikes flattery. Yang Xinxin laughed evilly. Is this all there is? There are no negative comments? Mu Yan continued, I haven't been in contact with him for a long time, so the information I've learned is also very little. If I have to say, then being cold-blooded and heartless towards outsiders and not having the slightest quality of being a strong person should be considered disadvantages. But these characteristics, I think, were extremely rare in the midst of the end times, and cannot even be considered drawbacks. The corners of Zhang Yi's mouth rose higher and higher as he nodded with deep conviction and exclaimed, to think that she understands me so well. Yang Xinxin had wanted to tease Zhang Yi a bit, but as a result, she didn't expect that inside Mu Yan's eyes, Zhang Yi's image was so bright. But it was no wonder. Zhang Yi was a strong man, the #1 expert in the Jiangnan region, and the vast majority of people would bring their own strongman filters when they looked at him. If she had spent some time with Zhang Yi, she would have found out that Zhang Yi snored in his sleep, played games with Fatty Sue and cheated when he couldn't afford to lose, as well as the bedroom was never tidied up, and many other faults. Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xinxin. I think this girl has a lot of potential, we can consider letting her join the shelter. Yang Xinxin looked at Zhang Yi with an odd expression. Brother, what potential are you talking about? Which aspect was it? Although Mu Yan's figure is slightly flat, whether it's her fair complexion or delicate face, or that charming silver hair after the mutation, the mystery brought by the black blindfold that was always over her eyes, she could easily charm any man. Zhang Yi said lightly, in every aspect. Xinxin, don't think too much, I am a decent man. Yang Xinxin skimmed her mouth, surprisingly a bit sultry at Zhang Yi's statement. She whispered, there are times when one does not need to be too righteous. Soon she raised her head, stared at Mu Yan, and inquired one last question. If we let you join our team, would you be willing to be loyal to Zhang Yi, to the team? Mu Yan pondered for a second and gave her answer. As long as the team is able to give me a safe haven, so that my survival is well protected. I will also fight with all my might to maintain the team. Naturally, I will also offer my loyalty to the team's leader, Zhang Yi. Yang Xinxin and Zhang Yi glanced at each other. Yang Xinxin nodded, looks like she's pretty good. Zhang Yi nodded as well, I feel the same way, it's worth taking, but Xinxin, is there any chance that your ability won't work on some people? Yang Xinxin smiled, even against a Sky Dragon King in the Epsilon realm, my ability can work. Not to mention her. Zhang Yi silently took out a shot of spitting truth from dimensional space. But I like double insurance. So after having administered the injection of spitting truth to Mu Yan, the duo repeated the previous question. It wasn't until this time that it could be confirmed that what she had said was true. In fact, before this, Zhang Yi believed 70 to 80% of Mu Yan. The reason was simple, he was strong enough, and following him was a better choice than following Zhu Zheng and waiting to be a feeder later. It was only the caution he had been exercising that made him still choose to put on a few more layers of insurance. It wasn't until now that he truly trusted Mu Yan. However, there was still a need to examine her more deeply before deciding whether or not to get her over from Zhu Zheng's side. Zhang Yi quickly returned to the shelter in Tianhai City. He immediately gathered everyone in the family in the living room. Seeing this, everyone knew something had happened. Usually, Zhang Yi would not gather the whole family unless something very important had happened. When Zhou Keir and the few others saw that Mu Yan had followed them over, they couldn't help but be curious in their hearts. Zhang Yi, did something else happen over at Blizzard City? Shokir asked with concern. The crowd was also inquiring. Uncle Yu shook his shoulders, and there was a surprising urge to leap forward inside his eyes. He had been resting inside his home for more than half a year, and now that his strength had easily increased, he desperately wished to help Zhang Yi and go do something. Fatty Su had a worried look on his face, holding his big face, fearing that there would be something else for him to do that required risking his life. Zhang Yi directly told everyone what was going on. Xinjiang's side has issued a summoning order to the 5 major regions, asking the top mutants from each region to go there to solve a problem that is causing them a headache. I intend to go over and take a look at the situation. Shokir frowned slightly and said with some concern, wasn't the Xinjiang region the most powerful in Huashu Kingdom? How dangerous would it be if even they can't solve the problem? Zhang Yi smiled and put his arm around her shoulders. Don't worry, I told you, I'm just going to take a look at the situation, and if things are really very dangerous, I'll have my own way to escape. In the entire Huashu Kingdom, Zhang Yi's ability to escape ranked second. No one should dare to rank first. Shokir nodded. That's good. A hint of low spirits showed in Lu Karen's eyes. Once you left, again, it was unknown how long it would take for you to return. Shou Jaime also said worriedly, when you're not around, it always makes people feel unsettled in their hearts. Sky Dragon King's attack had brought them a huge shock, allowing them to see that under the attack of the top mutants, ordinary people were as weak as ants. That kind of terror was like a natural disaster that mortals could only passively endure. Zhang Yi rubbed his hands together and said with a faint smile, I have considered this. To be honest, I wasn't very comfortable leaving you guys here. That's why I brought her here. Zhang Yi looked at Mu Yan. She is not a stranger to you guys. Mu Yan's ability can bring living people inside her shadow space. So when the time comes, you guys can come with me to Xinjiang and walk around as if it was a pleasure trip. Even if you encounter danger, you can still enter her shadow. Mu Yan's ability was a kind of attachment. As long as she attached herself to Zhang Yi's body, she was absolutely safe if nothing happened to Zhang Yi. When the crowd heard this, they became excited. Shou Jaime slapped her thighs. Aya, that would be great. Speaking of which, we really haven't left Tianhai City since the end of the world. Staying at home every day was good, but it's also boring. It would be great if we could go out for a walk. Shokir and Yang Xia looked at Zhang Yi, but said, in that case, when you run into trouble in the future, you won't have to let you go out alone. We can't help you by staying at home, we can only be scared. Wherever you go in the future, we can accompany you. Isn't that great? The crowd was overjoyed. 1. It was because in the future, they could finally not have to stay at home all the time. 2. It was because they could follow Zhang Yi's side and be able to help him. In the past, they were too much weaker than Zhang Yi, so Zhang Yi didn't dare to take them with him wherever he went. But having said that, all these people within the family could provide Zhang Yi with great help. Whether it was Shokir's healing ability, Yang Xia's supernatural recovery ability, Lu Karen's technological support, or Yang Xinxin's mind and lust angel control ability. All of these people were excellent aids. If they could be brought around, they could solve Zhang Yi's worries. Zhang Yi laughed. You guys can discuss this yourselves. If you want to go out with me, then go. If you are too lazy to go out and want to stay at home, then stay and watch the house. Shokir pouted. I was bound to go with you anyway. I don't want to leave you for that long. Yang Xia wrapped her arm around Zhang Yi's other arm. I was too. I can still help you cook good food when I follow you around. With little hesitation, everyone in the family decided to follow Zhang Yi out. Even the most timid and lazy Fatty Su was clamoring to go out with Zhang Yi. After all, he didn't feel safe staying inside the shelter by himself after everyone had left. It was better to follow Zhang Yi's side. Shou Jaime looked at Mu Yan, who was sitting beside her with a cold expression, and couldn't help but ask the question on her mind. Miss, there are so many of us. Can your supernatural ability take us all? Taking in so many people would place high demands on the shadow space. That was because Zhang Yi always took a long time whenever he went out. It wasn't enough to just stuff people inside. They also had to consider food and shelter. Mu Yan sat up straight, her cold voice tinged with sweetness. Don't worry, I am a captain after all. Although my space is not as big as Mr. Zhang Yi's, it can still accommodate several thousand people. After saying that, she unfolded her shadow on the floor in front of the crowd, turning it into a huge circle. Everyone, please come in and take a look, she said, and led the way in herself. As the people stood in the middle of the circular shadow, they slowly sank in. Zhang Yi took a sip of hot tea and took the lead to walk in. His ability had already locked Mu Yan, and he was not worried about her pulling any tricks. After walking into the shadow space, Zhang Yi realized that it was not as gloomy as he had imagined. It was a fairly large space, probably as large as the entire Yunk Manor. Under his feet was a sturdy ground, and while there was no moon above his head, the ceiling shone with a dark blue luster. It was huge, but empty. Just in the center of the shadow space, there was a huge double bed, with some clothes thrown randomly around it. Zhang Yi's eyes opened slightly, and scattered on the floor, apart from the usual clothes, there were surprisingly many stockings and underwear. Zhang Yi just glanced at them, and Mu Yan instantly walked over with hasty footsteps and stuffed those clothes under the quilt. I live rather simply, Mu Yan deliberately said in a cool tone. The crowd followed at this moment, all exclaiming the immensity of shadow space. Mu Yan wasn't wrong, accommodating a few thousand people here didn't seem cramped in the slightest. As the inferior supernatural of Zhang Yi's ability, Mu Yan's shadow space had little ability to fight. Strictly speaking, it was used for possession and hiding, as well as storing supplies. It's a bit simpler, but it's not a big problem, Zhang Yi said indifferently. We can find a way to add some housing and furniture here. There's no shortage of supplies inside the shelter, it's a good solution. Lu Karen said, I'll solve the problem of housing, although I can't get many big villas, simple housing can be done in minutes. Shou Kir nodded and smiled, the conditions here are already very good. The crowd stayed inside shadow space for a while before going out. After all, this place was too empty and there wasn't much to see. After everyone went out, they began to start packing up their supplies, with a load of food and living materials being carried inside. The housing and furniture was left to Lu Karen and Zhang Yi to take care of. Lu Karen utilized her ability to quickly create a group of simple housing. Although it was said to be simple housing, it had all the facilities and was sturdy and durable. As for the furniture, Zhang Yi had swept through almost all the large shopping malls in Tianhai City, and there was no shortage of luxury furniture. Taking out some of them would be enough. Fatty Sue and Uncle Yu were responsible for the transportation. After Uncle Yu's drills, Fatty Sue's strength and endurance had improved quite a bit now, even though he hadn't lost much weight in size. Although he kept grunting and shouting that he was tired, carrying the furniture was obviously much easier than in the past. Everyone else was happily preparing their supplies for the trip, and had clearly treated this trip to Xinjiang as a tour. Zhang Yi looked towards a corner of the living room, where Totoro was sitting in a simple and cute manner not far from the fireplace, playing with his beloved bone flute. Right now, Zhang Yi still knew nothing about the origin of the Totoro. It was basically harmless and had become the favorite pet of everyone in the family. Although it possessed powerful supernatural abilities, it was not good at fighting. Now that everyone was heading to Xinjiang, Zhang Yi was considering whether or not to bring it along. After all, the existence of Totoro was a secret to Zhang Yi, and he did not want others to know about it. After thinking about it for a while, Zhang Yi decided that it was better to bring it with him. After all, it wasn't good to leave it alone. However, before leaving, he decided to say hello to the others. On the side of the three major bases, Zhang Yi quickly notified them, telling them all to be vigilant during this period of time, and to notify him at the first opportunity if any changes occurred in Tianhai City. Then, he walked out of the shelter again and came to the Heron River in front of Yunk Manor. Zhang Yi arrived at the riverside. The thick layer of ice was hard as metal, but there was a piece of ice that was light in color a few dozen meters away from the shore. Zhang Yi walked over and reached out to knock on top of the ice. Soon after, a huge frog crawled out from underneath the ice. Zhang Yi pulled back a certain distance, and the frog shook off the mud stains on its body with great force. Rib bit. Zhang Yi, what brings you here? Was it because you wanted to eat fish? Let me tell you, there are so many big fish in this river. I can't even eat them all. Zhang Yi smiled and shook his head. No, thank you for your kindness. Frog, we're leaving for a while. The frog froze at his words. Rib bit? Where are you going? Away for a long time. A hint of reluctance showed in his eyes. During these half a year, he had also developed deep emotions with Zhang Yi and the others, especially with Totoro. These two guys who didn't speak the same language had formed the best confidant through sound and rhythm. Without Totoro, all of his harp solos would be silent and cool. Zhang Yi thought about it and smiled. It shouldn't be too long. But it's hard to say. Rib bit. I know, I will wait for you here. You should know that frogs hibernate. As long as I close my eyes, I can sleep until the end of time. But as soon as you guys come back, all you need to do is to lightly tap on the ice, and I'll wake up right away. So I'll always be here waiting for you guys to come back, my friends. Zhang Yi smiled. The frog was always so likable. It seemed to have no worries in its world and always remained optimistic about everything. By the way, there is one more thing that I think I should tell you. The frog suddenly said. Zhang Yi blinked. What is it? The frog opened its arms, revealing its round belly. That was that the sound rhythm can open one's heart, and you can hear things that speech cannot express. Zhang Yi hugged his arms. You should know that I don't know much about music, I can only listen. And to me, as long as it sounds good, that's good music. Frog shook his head. No, I was not trying to discuss this with you. I was trying to say that through sound, I can feel Totoro's heart. He covered his chest and closed his eyes. I can feel its inner loneliness, as well as its confusion about this world. Zhang Yi raised an eyebrow. This frog was probably literally sick, and Zhang Yi was too lazy to pretend this with others. Aha, you're right. Then it's settled, we'll see you later. The frog hopped. Rib bit. We'll meet again when I wake up. Zhang Yi reached out to say goodbye to the frog. For the next 3 days, the whole family was very excited about their rare trip out and away, so they decorated their residence afterward, Muyan's shadow space, with extra splendor. Zhang Yi himself was shocked when he saw it. Because it was just like a huge and gorgeous manor. There were too many talents inside the home, and it was decorated with lights and colors, and there was everything inside. Even was laid artificial lawn, out of a huge yard. The introduction of water flow into an artificial lake, and even threw some small shallow sea fish into it with great interest. Zhang Yi was dumbfounded, thinking, you people really know how to play. This also highlighted a problem from the side. Everyone was really suffocating for too long, even though it was safe inside the home, but people always like to go out and see the animals in the distant scenery. 3 days later in the morning, Zhang Yi brought the crowd to Blizzard City. Zhu Zheng and Deng Shintong and the others were ready, just waiting for Zhang Yi's arrival. How do we get over there? Are there underground tunnels leading from Jiangnan region to Xinjiang region as well? Zhang Yi inquired. Zhu Zheng smiled. That one was just too slow, we have better transportation. With that, he led Zhang Yi and the others to Blizzard City's airport. It was a huge airplane silo, and after entering the doors, a very odd machine was presented in front of Zhang Yi and the others. That airplane looked extremely unique as it had no wings, only a huge cabin with a jet engine hanging underneath the fuselage. From afar, it looked like a giant grayish-white cigar. This is the transportation you will be using this time. Zhu Zheng said to Zhang Yi and the others with a smile. Lu Karen's eyes lit up when she saw the strangely shaped machine, and she stared at the airplane for a closer look. Fatty Su muttered, did the airplane wings forget to install? Uncle Yu blankly glanced at him without any good humor. What do you know? This is a military airplane, and it was using all of Huashu Kingdom's current top-notch technology. The wings were usually removed and only installed when in use. Deng Shintong explained to Zhang Yi, this was the latest model of jet airplane, produced in the Northern Realms Freemans. They have always been at the forefront of the world in the field of military industry, and their weapons are of the world's #1 caliber in terms of cold resistance. After the end times, many large military equipment were eliminated due to their inability to adapt to ultra-low temperatures. Like this F-37, it is a transport aircraft that can fly at high speeds and ultra-low temperatures. Deng Shintong had a few Heavenly God Squad members with him, and he didn't make much fanfare on this trip, appearing to be very low-key. It was probably also because he was clear about his status and was mainly accompanying Zhang Yi on the trip. And since Zhang Yi was a person who never liked to be in the limelight, he certainly had to follow suit and keep a low profile. After Zhang Yi and the others bid farewell to Zhu Zheng, they boarded the airplane. Until the time the plane took off, Fatty Sue and the others were still full of panic, afraid that this airplane without wings would fall. However, their worries were of course redundant as the V-37 quickly lifted off and then flew at a high speed towards the northern country. Zhang Yi looked out the window. At this time, frost had formed around the thick window glass. Even if it was the most advanced cold-proof material, it was difficult to be completely unaffected at high altitude. The clouds at high altitude carried a cold whiteness, the dark clouds were thick and heavy snow drifted down, as if this doomsday would never end. After the end of the world, Zhang Yi traveled to the north for the first time. He had been to Xinjiang, and at that time, he had only gone there for a vacation, and there was another time. Zhang Yi smiled faintly, and when he thought of that time, he couldn't help but feel a little strange in his heart. It was because at that time, he and Fan Yuqing were traveling together in Xinjiang. He was still very simple at that time. He had also once genuinely liked someone and longed for all the bright futures. But now, a year and a half of time had passed since the end of the world, and Fan Yuqing had died on that cold and harsh day. Everything, however, felt like a century had passed and things had long since changed. Zhang Yi leaned back on the comfortable sofa and slightly closed his eyes. Everything was unknown when they went to Xinjiang, so they would see what was waiting for them. Zhou Qi came to his side and asked gently, "Zhang Yi, are you not feeling well?" Zhang Yi covered his face with both hands and slowly said, "It's fine, I'm just a little sad." It was only at this moment that he remembered. Fan Yuqing had never liked him. Seeing this, Zhou Qi tenderly put her arms around Zhang Yi, placing his head in front of her body and wrapping her warm bosom around him. The airplane swiftly swept under the cloudy sky, heading towards the huge city in the northern country. Northern Kingdom, Xinjiang. As the capital of Huashu Kingdom, this huge city lay like a crouching dragon above the northern land. While the snow-white ice field was now the main color of the pale earth, the enormous Xinjiang brought a deep bright yellow to this earth. The main color of Xinjiang was bright yellow, and yellow had represented kingship and honor in several recent dynasties. Therefore, in Xinjiang, you can see tall buildings of ancient style and complete palace complexes everywhere. Xinjiang City has a city within a city, and there is also the Ming Emperor City within the outer city. Compared to the other regions, Xinjiang held the most resources and military power. The population that fed it was also the largest. This might have something to do with the fact that they were the first to find the Yuan ore located under the Qinling mountain after the end times. The abundance of energy allowed them to feed a large population, including a portion of the civilians outside of Minghuang City. Today's Xinjiang was extraordinarily bustling, with heavy guards everywhere in Minghuang City, and the Dragon's Roar Guardians were loaded with bullets, and their figures could be seen in every corner. Because today was the day that the Xinjiang region had summoned the entire Huashu Kingdom's 6 major powers to discuss national affairs. They had to show their strongest side to maintain the majesty of Xinjiang region so that the other 5 regions would submit. And in order to show enough sincerity, the one in charge of receiving them was also the real power in Xinjiang, the Dragon's Roar Guardians Grand General Xidagarba King, Shang Daowen. He wore a white special military uniform, and at around 40 years old, he was the perfect age for a man's physical strength and wisdom and emotional intelligence. And Shang Daowen was able to become the leader of Xinjiang's most important force, the Dragon's Roar Guardians, not only because of the great power he possessed, but also because of his careful and prudent nature, in which he showed off his inner strength. Early this morning, he arrived at the main gate of Ming Emperor City and began to start arranging for the reception. It was imperative to ensure that the 5 regions would not be given the feeling of overbearingness, but at the same time, the majesty of the Xinjiang region must be safeguarded. The first power to arrive in Xinjiang came from the northeast. The Dragon's Roar guardians guarding the city were on duty when they suddenly noticed a large black cloud emerging from the sky, spreading towards Xinjiang from the horizon. The command center of Dragon's Roar guardians immediately used their satellites for reconnaissance, and only then did they see clearly that the dark cloud was actually a large flock of crows. It was a huge flock of crows with scarlet eyes. Usually only crows that had eaten dead corpses would have such eyes, and their bodies were several times the size of ordinary crows, like small-sized eagles. The pitch-black feathers were like those made of raw iron, emitting an eerie cold aura. Thousands of crows circled in the air, their mouths emitting ominous cries. The people from the northeast region were the first to arrive in Xinjiang. The leader, Han Shanzhua, had a rakish demeanor that dazzled everyone on the walls of Xinjiang city. This was not like a powerful Epsilon mutant, it was clearly like a mutant boy who liked midnight racing. The transformed Harley snowmobile rumbled towards Xinjiang city, and behind it was followed by a group of Northeast Region's fleet. The corner of Shang Daowen's mouth revealed a smile as he grinned and brought people forward to greet them. However, looking at the crows that covered the sky, the muscles on Shang Daowen's face still couldn't help but twitch. I don't know what this Han Shanzhua's preferences were, but Xinjiang was not willing to let so many ominous birds fly in. Unlucky. However, as Han Shanzhua arrived under the gates of Xinjiang city, he stepped off his motorcycle, and the ravens that roamed the sky fluttered their wings, surprisingly transforming into a trail of black smoke in the air before eerily disappearing. He carried a blood-colored crow on his shoulder, removed the large toadstools on his eyes, and slowly walked to Shang Daowen with arrogant steps. Northeast region, Luya Dao Lord, is here. Han Shanzhua raised his eyebrows and said as such to Shang Daowen. A hint of a smile appeared in Shang Daowen's eyes as he politely extended his hand to lead the way. Thank you for the Northeast region representative's presence, please enter the city first and take a short rest. We have prepared a dinner tonight, and when the representatives from the other regions arrive, Commander Qin will personally entertain you all and discuss the big events. Han Shanzhua nodded, no problem. He waved towards behind him, brothers, let's go. The Northeast region's convoy passed through the security check at the doors and drove into the city, with someone leading them to the resting area. Not long afterward, the second group of people who came arrived as well. It was none other than the people from the East Sea region. The airplane landed at the indoor airport, the jets had no wings, surprisingly, they could hover just like a helicopter, and then slowly fell from the open roof of the airport. Shang Daowen led the crowd. The cabin door opened. The representative sent by the East Sea region was Vermilion Bird. Black Tortoise's main body couldn't leave the sea, much less travel to Xinjiang to participate in the mission, but in order to show respect to the Xinjiang region, it still sent Vermilion Bird, a representative amongst the military. In the half a year after the Star Island mission ended, her strength had gained a huge boost, surprisingly reaching a height of 9,800 points. This was not due to the East Sea region's devoted cultivation, but it also had to do with the other of the 4 spirits. Azure Dragon had suffered a serious injury after that battle, and his vitality had plummeted. According to the doctor's deduction, he might live for another 5 years at most. This was the price one had to pay for forcibly acquiring power that didn't belong to them. The Xinjiang side of course knew that Black Tortoise was unlikely to come, but Vermilion Bird's arrival was considered to be giving a great deal of respect. Therefore Shang Daowen still received them warmly and arranged for them to go rest first. Vermilion Bird first asked Shang Daowen to find out what people had already arrived. After being told that only the Northeast region had arrived, she stopped in her tracks. Vermilion Bird raised her eyes to look at Xinjiang city, which was filled with an ancient atmosphere, but she slowly shook her head at Shang Daowen. No need, I need to wait for someone. Shang Daowen raised an eyebrow before smiling, well then, go ahead. Vermilion Bird gathered the clothes on her body, and instead of leaving, she was waiting right here. eyes gazing into the distant sky, waiting for that person to arrive. This time she waited, it was more than an hour. And as an airplane flew in from the northwest and landed at Xinjiang's military airport, Vermilion Bird slowly raised her head, and a strange bright light flashed in her eyes. The representative of the Northwest region, too, had arrived. Shang Daowen brought people to greet the representative of the Northwest region, and compared to when he had greeted Han Shanzhua and Vermilion Bird earlier, Shang Daowen's attitude was obviously much more solemn. It seemed that this person who had come from the Northwest region had some sort of special status. In fact, that was indeed the case. Of the 6 regions of Huaxu Kingdom, the 5 regions of Xinjiang, Jiangnan, East Sea Region, Northwest Region, and Southwest Region, the supreme officer and the strongest combatant responsible for commanding a party were not a single person. But only the Northwest Region was an exception. The strongest person in this region was himself a young talent from a military family. When he became an Epsilon-level mutant, he utilized his powerful personal strength and strong hand to ascend to the throne of Supreme Commander of the Northwest Region. Therefore, in the entire Huaxu Kingdom, the Northwest Region Commander's position was the most stable and the most solid in the region. In the Northwest Region, almost all the power was concentrated in the hands of one force, the force belonging to Supreme Commander Emperor Gochen, Li Changgong. The cabin's doors slowly opened, and Vermilion Bird couldn't help but walk over, her gaze towards the cabin door becoming somewhat fiery. An upright figure in military uniform appeared at the doors. It was a man around 35 years old, his tall and upright body was a bit thin, but his figure stood out like a javelin in the bitter cold wind. He wore white gloves on his hands, and one hand was pressed to the 2 long swords he carried at his left waist. His face looked like the best craftsman had polished it on steel with a carving knife, carrying a coldness that was not angry. Between his looks, there was a domineering aura of looking down on the living world. He also did have such qualifications. Because looking at the entire Huaxu Kingdom, he was perhaps the most powerful man. Northwest King, Li Changgong. When she saw Li Changgong, Vermilion Bird's gaze became excited, and Li Changgong lowered his head to see her as well, a faint smile appearing on his cold face. Shang Daowen went forward to express his greetings as well as his gratitude. After all, as the Northwest King, it was still a bit of a surprise to Shang Daowen that Li Changgong was able to come here in person. Although the Xinjiang region was the strongest as Huaxu Kingdom, the convening order issued this time might not be given face by every region. For the Supreme Commander of the Northwest region, whether or not he would be able to put aside his region's affairs and personally travel there, the Xinjiang region's side was not clear at first. Li Changgong nodded toward Shang Daowen. I didn't just come here for the Xinjiang region's convening order this time, but I also have a bit of personal business. Shang Daowen was puzzled in his heart. Li Changgong had been in the Northwest for years, and although he was also the son of a powerful family in Xinjiang, he did not have many interactions with Xinjiang after the end of the world. What kind of personal affairs could there be? At this time, Li Changgong crossed over him and walked towards Vermilion Bird. Vermilion Bird couldn't wait to walk over and open her mouth to shout, "Big brother." Li Changgong nodded towards her. "Little Han, how are you healing from the injuries you received over at Star Island?" Vermilion Bird, formerly known as Jiang Han. Jiang Han smiled. "It's almost healed." Li Changgong asked, "That fellow, has he come yet?" When he mentioned that guy, his eyes became obviously sharp, with an intimidating killing intent. Jiang Han took a deep breath. "That guy's character has always been cautious. This time, he may not come over." Li Changgong listened to Jiang Han's words, and the corner of his mouth hooked into an icy arc the Jiangnan region could only send him, otherwise, there's no one else who can take the fight. Jiang Han whispered, "Big brother, do you really want to fight him?" Li Changgong pressed down on his long sword and said coldly, "He killed elder brother Lin and almost killed you. This kind of despicable and shameless fellow, I absolutely cannot let him go. As long as he appears here today, I'll be sure to ruthlessly clean him up." The old brother Lin that Li Changgong spoke of was none other than the White Tiger, one of the 4 spirits of the East Sea, whose real name was Lin Tianqi. Among the military, those who were able to hold high positions were not from prominent families. If it wasn't for the arrival of the end times, which allowed ordinary people to gain great power through mutation, I'm afraid that ordinary people like Zhang Yi and Black Tortoise wouldn't have had a chance to make a name for themselves at all. If you have exceptional talent and a strong background, your chances of becoming someone extraordinary are millions of times greater than those of the average person. Ordinary geniuses are easily overlooked, while those with a strong background are easily discovered. Li Changgong, Jiang Han, and Lin Tianqi knew each other since childhood because of their father's connections, and they were very close. When they grew up, the three followed their father's arrangements and joined the military. Li Changgong went to the northwest, while Jiang Han and Lin Tianqi went to the East Sea region to join the navy. Although these three were not biological brothers and sister, they treated each other as brothers and sister because of the feelings they had cultivated in a large courtyard since childhood. In the Battle of Star Island, the two major regions and the Colombian Navy suffered heavy losses, with more than half of the mutants killed in battle. White Tiger also died in that tragic war. After Li Changgong received this news, he blamed Zhang Yi for everything. If it wasn't for the stability of Huashu Kingdom, he probably would have rushed to Tianhai City to settle the score with Zhang Yi. Now that he easily had this opportunity to meet Zhang Yi, and it was still in Xinjing, an area far away from Tianhai City. Of course he would not miss the chance to avenge his brother and sister. Jiang Han frowned slightly and said to Li Changgong, "Big brother, you and that chaos fellow are both epsilons, being the pillars of Huashu Kingdom nowadays. A fight between you guys is not a good thing for the country." Li Changgong laughed coldly, "Don't worry, I know what's in my heart. I won't kill him, but I'll also make him suffer some pain and learn a point." He gripped the hilt of the sword in his hand, his gaze as sharp as lightning. "As a soldier, I'm going to let him know that backstabbing one's friend's army was a huge price to pay. This time was just a warning, if there's a next time, I'll definitely kill him myself." Jiang Han thought for a moment, then suddenly whispered, "But, he was not a soldier." Li Changgong was slightly stunned, then said coldly, "Times are tough, everyone is a soldier, how come he isn't?" Jiang Han didn't expect there to be this kind of argument, but since it was Li Changgong who said it, then it must be correct. Shang Daowen vaguely heard the conversation between the two from a distance. The two didn't turn their backs on him either, and although Shang Daowen didn't like eavesdropping, he still heard a little bit along the wind. "Ahem, Gochen, this time it was Xinjing that invited you here to discuss important matters. So I hope that you will give Xinjing face during this time and not strike out at anyone. Otherwise, we, as hosts, will not be able to sit back and do nothing." Shang Daowen said with a smirk, polite, without losing his majesty. Li Changgong narrowed his eyes at him. "If, for example, I challenge him and he responds to the battle, then isn't that all right?" Shang Daowen nodded with a smile. "If it was something that both of you approve of, we certainly have no problem with it." "Good." Li Changgong nodded. As long as Zhang Yi arrived, he naturally had a way to make Zhang Yi fight with him. "I will be here today, waiting for him to come over." As Li Changgong's words fell, his men carried out tables, chairs and shed parasol from amongst the airplanes and set them up right here at the airport. Li Changgong called out to Vermilion Bird to sit down, and one of the female officers under his command actually took out a heater on the spot and started to heat up a pot of Great Northwest Fen wine. "Mr. Shang, come over and sit down for a while. There's a good show to watch later," Li Changgong said to Shang Daowen. Shang Daowen smiled faintly, "I don't need to. But Mr. Gochen, please call me Geocache." Li Changgong snorted with some disdain. "You guys, you really were used to being one-dimensional. It's obvious that you were already Epsilon, but you still talk about so many bullshit rules." The two men were not strangers, both having hung out in the capital circle and not having dealt with each other much. Shang Daowen smiled deeply, "There are no rules. I think it is better to know the rules, lest there be any accidents." As he finished his sentence, his gaze drifted into the distance. In the north of Xinjing, that large hall in the central area, it was as if something was watching the entire Xinjing. Li Changgong and the others did not have to wait long. Zhang Yi and his group arrived in Qingjing very quickly, and the F-37, the newest type of jet airplane, was really not something to sneeze at. There were no wings, but the flight speed was amazingly fast, and the distance of more than 1,000 kilometers only took half an hour. Arriving in the northern country, Zhang Yi lifted his head from above Zhou Qir's knees and looked out the window. Through the window, the huge and ancient imperial city could be seen. The airplane quickly landed at the airport. Zhang Yi didn't consider anything else, but just called out to the crowd to go down with him. The big guys were full of anticipation. After all, after the end of the world, it wasn't easy to want to travel to the distant north. However, Zhou Qir still carefully urged everyone not to just think about playing. After all, this time, she was mainly accompanying Zhang Yi to attend the meeting. No one was sure what the Xinjiang region was like, so don't stir up trouble. Deng Shintong walked over. Captain Chaos, let's go. Zhang Yi nodded lazily, let's go. The door of the cabin opened and they walked out of the doors along the gangway. Zhang Yi immediately felt countless gazes converge on him. A few of these gazes were particularly sharp and caught Zhang Yi's attention at once. An elegant officer leading a group of Dragon's Roar Guardians was waiting for them with a smile right in front of the airplane. However, not far away, there were two other gazes that caught Zhang Yi's attention even more. At such a freezing cold time of the year, if anyone would set up tables and chairs near the huge airport and leisurely drink, it was naturally very noticeable. Zhang Yi saw Jiang Han and also the man next to her with a murderous aura. And Li Changdong glanced back at Zhang Yi. The domineering aura was leaking out. This was Zhang Yi's most intuitive feeling. That man was like a long sword out of its sheath, giving off a feeling of being sharp and not easy to approach. His eyes made Zhang Yi very uncomfortable. It was not the usual scrutinizing eyes, but rather, it was with a distinct hostility and even a hint of contempt. Who was he? Zhang Yi asked Deng Shintong beside him. Deng Shintong was also stunned for a moment when he saw Li Changdong, then said, why is he here? Amidst Zhang Yi's puzzled gaze, Deng Shintong briefly introduced Zhang Yi. He was Northwest King Li Changdong, the #1 powerhouse of the Northwest region, Epsilon Realm. At the same time, he was also the Supreme Commander of the Northwest region. I originally thought that as Supreme Commander, he would have excused himself from this gathering. But I didn't expect, that he would personally come here. It seems like this rally really isn't simple. Zhang Yi couldn't help but raise an eyebrow after hearing Li Changdong's identity. #1 expert, Supreme Commander. When these two identities were concentrated in one person's body, it signified that the Northwest region must have experienced a change in power. This did not come as a surprise. If he or Black Tortoise had this kind of idea, they would have the same chance to become the region's commander. It was just that neither of them were willing to do that. Managing a large region was no easy task, and there was no telling how many troubles one would need to face every day. Since Li Changdong was able to rise to the top, it didn't just show that he was strong, it also showed that he was sufficiently confident in his ability to command. He can balance external crusades with managing internal affairs. Northwest, Li family. These keywords caused an ancient monarch to appear in the center of Zhang Yi's mind. However, he quickly pushed the thought out of his mind. When he saw Jiang Han, as well as Li Changdong's unfriendly look, he realized what was going on. It looks like he was trying to stand up for the people of the East Sea region. To retaliate for the setup I set up on Star Island? Zhang Yi quickly figured this out. He remained silent and slowly walked down the gangway. Jiangnan region, chaos. Xinjiang, geocache. Shang Daowen smiled and said, Chaos's name is as loud as thunder, and I've always wanted to meet him in person. When I see it today, it really lives up to its name. 3 epsilons had already appeared today, which had already reached Qin Qigong's ideal number. If today's meeting was able to reach a perfect agreement, then it was a great good for the entire Xinjiang region, as well as the entire Huaxu kingdom. Your Excellencies have traveled a long way. We have already prepared guest rooms, so a few of you can take a rest first. Tonight, our commander will personally host a banquet for all of you. Zhang Yi nodded, but his gaze crossed over him and landed on Li Changgong's body. At this moment, Li Changgong had already stood up tall, his military boots stepping firmly on the hard road as he walked over. "You are Chaos from the Jiangnan region, the guy who stabbed his allies in the back and harmed so many people?" As Li Changgong walked over, his cold tone was filled with a strong sense of hostility. Shang Daowen introduced Zhang Yi. "This is the Northwest Region's Gochin, Mr. Chaos, although I don't know what kind of conflict there is between you two. But if you find it troublesome today, I will step in and help mediate between you." Li Changgong walked over in large strides, his left hand pressing down on his saber, his sharp eyes bursting with intense battle intent. He suddenly shouted, "Betraying your allies and killing many soldiers is disloyalty. Concealing information, causing the tragic deaths of many people in the Jiangnan region, and causing hostility between the Jiangnan region and the East Sea region is injustice. Yet you rely on your overwhelming strength to escape justice. You are a disgrace to the Huaxu kingdom." Li Changgong loudly listed Zhang Yi's crimes, then asked sternly, "In order to restore the morals of the Huaxu kingdom and avenge my fallen comrades, I will fight you to the death today. Chaos, do you dare accept?" Li Changgong's words caused everyone present to change their expressions. There were quite a few people at the airport. In order to show the importance that the Xinjiang region attached to the distinguished guests from other regions, Shang Daowen had brought along many important officials from Xinjiang. There were hundreds of Dragon Guardians alone who were responsible for maintaining order at the scene. Not to mention that representatives from the Northwest region, East Sea region, and Jiangnan region were also present. Li Changgong's words were merciless, branding Zhang Yi as a traitor and a disloyal person. At this moment, if Zhang Yi backed down even a little, he would quickly become a laughingstock throughout the Huaxu kingdom. Shang Daowen couldn't help but glance at Li Changgong and thought to himself, "No wonder you were so confident that Chaos would definitely fight you. So you played such a dirty trick." He sighed inwardly and kept a close eye on Zhang Yi's reaction to avoid a violent conflict between the two. If they really fought and someone got hurt, it would be a big problem. On Zhang Yi's side, he slowly narrowed his eyes, a cold glint flashing in them. He understood perfectly well that the man in front of him was trying to force him into a fight. Behind him, Zhou Keir and the others were also furious, but they were sensible and didn't speak up at this moment. Because Zhang Yi needed to face Li Changgong now, if they spoke up, it would only make Zhang Yi, the top fighter of the Jiangnan region, look like he didn't know how to discipline his own people. Li Changgong looked coldly at Zhang Yi and continued, "Chaos, do you dare accept?" The corners of Zhang Yi's mouth curled up, and a hint of mockery flashed in his eyes. "You? Are you worthy?" He pointed contemptuously at Li Changgong and shouted, "You are only 40 years old, yet you have become the commander of the Northwest region. I heard that the commander of the Northwest region before you was Luo Yunfeng, a highly respected old general. You lack experience and ability, and you seized the position of commander by force. This is disloyalty. The Xinjiang region has convened the 6 major regions to discuss important matters. This is for the future development of the Huaxu kingdom and is related to the fate of the country. To come and cause trouble at a time like this, disregarding the world, is unkind. I made arrangements on Star Island to inflict heavy losses on the Columbus Ocean Fleet, the greatest enemy of the Huaxu kingdom and the biggest obstacle to our expansion into the sea. The Lord of the Ocean, Cardalus, was seriously injured and will be unable to threaten the southeast waters of Huaxu for a short time. You remain silent about such a great achievement and only know how to calculate losses. You are clearly jealous of my achievements and are trying to slander me. Ignoring the facts is unjust." At this point, Zhang Yi paused and said in a low voice, "I also heard that your mother has found another lover and is preparing to remarry, but you have repeatedly prevented her from doing so. This is dishonorable. You are disloyal, disrespectful, unkind, and unjust, yet you have the nerve to challenge me? Are you worthy?" Zhang Yi's words were like a bomb that had fallen on the scene, sending shockwaves through everyone's hearts. Everyone had been listening calmly to the previous few sentences, but the last one made them all look at Li Changgong with strange eyes. No one knew that the Li family had such a complicated history. Based on their ages, Li Changgong's mother was already nearly 60 years old. Who would have thought that she could still blossom in her old age and enjoy a second spring? Of course, the last part was just Zhang Yi's nonsense. He didn't know Li Changgong at all, let alone his parents. But rumors don't need evidence. As one of the strongest Epsilon-level warriors in the Huashu Kingdom, whatever Zhang Yi said would naturally be believed by others and spread widely. He wouldn't fight Li Changgong without knowing anything about him. But when it came to verbal sparring, Li Changgong was a nobleman, so how could he compete with Zhang Yi, who came from a common background? Li Changgong couldn't imagine that Zhang Yi, a proud Epsilon, would curse him like that and even mention his mother. In an instant, his eyes flashed with an intense killing intent. Clang! He drew the long sword in his hand and pointed it at Zhang Yi. "You're asking for death." Zhang Yi's words directly broke Li Changgong's defenses. It was mainly the last sentence that was too powerful. He didn't expect Zhang Yi to pull such a move. Zhang Yi used his own methods to strike back hard. If his previous scolding of Zhang Yi was high-sounding and righteous, then Zhang Yi's reckless remarks afterwards were purely nonsense. However, most people in this world are not very interested in such noble-sounding words. People prefer to listen to gossip. Especially gossip about people who are high-ranking, powerful, and famous. That one sentence made many people not care much about what Zhang Yi had done, but only wanted to hear how Li Changgong's mother had become so strong in her old age and found a second spring. Li Changgong pulled out the long sword in his hand and pointed it directly at Zhang Yi. The soldiers of the northwest region behind him also drew their weapons, and suddenly the entire airport was filled with a murderous aura. Zhang Yi's eyes flashed, and before he spoke, he immediately used everything follows the trail to lock onto Li Changgong and cast everything under heaven around everyone to prevent Li Changgong from launching an attack. But just at this moment, Shang Daowen slowly walked over and stood between the two. "Go Chen, I've already said it. If you and Chaos agree to settle your personal grudges privately, I won't stop you. But if anyone wants to cause trouble in Xinjiang, I will intervene." Seeing this, Zhang Yi smiled slightly. The Xinjiang region was the Xinjiang region. At a time like this, they wouldn't let anyone challenge their authority. After all, they were the hosts. Zhang Yi stood behind Shang Daowen with a smile on his face, looking at Li Changgong without saying a word. Li Changgong's expression turned extremely ugly. Zhang Yi refused to accept his challenge to a duel, and he couldn't possibly lose face by arguing with Zhang Yi. After all, Zhang Yi was just a commoner, and his style of doing things was always focused on results, without regard for reputation. Zhang Yi could stand there and argue with him without losing face. But he couldn't. He was the son of a distinguished family and now the supreme commander of the Northwest region. Doing so would only make him a laughing stock among the upper circles of the Huashu Kingdom, and he would gain nothing. "Chaos, are you afraid to fight me? Are you just going to hide behind the Xinjiang region like a turtle?" Heh. Li Changgong deliberately mocked him loudly, trying to provoke Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi stood with his hands behind his back and snorted disdainfully, "A disloyal, disrespectful, unkind, and unjust person like you has the right to fight me? I don't want to dirty my hands." With that, he sighed deeply. Surely no one would bite back after being bitten by a dog. "Alas, I can't do that. I am a man of honor." Li Changgong wanted to gain the upper hand with his words, but he didn't understand the situation at all. Zhang Yi continued, "You'd be better off going home early and asking your mother if what I said is true." Li Changgong, Zhang Yi, never lie. I'm telling you the truth for the sake of your family's harmony." Zhang Yi spoke with such conviction that Li Changgong clenched his sword even tighter. If it weren't for his concern for Shang Daowen and the masters of Xinjiang who had yet to appear, he would have charged forward with his sword long ago. Unfortunately, these words came from Zhang Yi's mouth, and even if he was talking nonsense, the people around him didn't know that. Who was Zhang Yi? He was an Epsilon-level mutant and one of the strongest people in the Huashu Kingdom. How could someone of his status talk nonsense? The aura of a powerful person, coupled with their lack of understanding of Zhang Yi, made many people believe what he said. Although it was inconvenient to say it in front of Li Changgong, everyone's eyes were burning with the fire of the 8 trigrams. It was almost a foregone conclusion that after today, the story of the Li family would spread throughout Xinjiang. Shang Daowen frowned. 2 epsilon-level mutants were important figures in the country. What kind of example were they setting by acting like street thugs here? He said, you two should say a little less. Since Chaos refuses to fight, you two should go back and rest first. When this matter is settled, you can decide how to deal with it yourselves. Zhang Yi nodded, of course, I will still give face to the Xinjiang region. After all, I am a polite person and won't cause trouble on someone else's turf. Li Changgong gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with murderous intent, wishing he could eat Zhang Yi alive. Chaos. You damn bastard, just you wait. If I don't teach you a lesson, then I, Li Changgong, will take away your last name. Zhang Yi provocatively waved his finger at him, I'll be waiting for you. Zhang Yi led his men away from the airport under the vicious glares of the people from the northwest region and headed for the guest rooms prepared for them in the Xinjiang region. Li Changgong, who was trying to suppress his anger, could only sheath his sword and leave with his men in a rage. Jiang Han saw this and shook her head helplessly. She had reminded Li Changgong that Zhang Yi was not a guy with any sense of honor. However, even though Li Changgong was mentally prepared, he didn't expect Zhang Yi to be even more shameless than he had thought. Now, things have really been blown out of proportion. Jiang Han covered her forehead in despair. She had indeed hoped that Li Changgong would teach Zhang Yi a lesson. But Zhang Yi had spoken too harshly, and she was a little worried that Li Changgong would kill him. After all, Li Changgong had an ability index of 16,000 and was a chariot-level epsilon with terrifying abilities on land. What a mess. Let's see how you guys clean this up. Jiang Han did not forget the purpose of her trip. After bidding farewell to Li Changgong, she left with the people from the East Sea region. After they left, many of the staff members at the scene immediately started chatting privately. Hey, did you hear what Chaos just said about Gochen? That was explosive. I didn't expect the Gochen family to be so interesting. Hey, what's so strange about that? In their circle, it's common for them to play around a little. They used to do it in private, but now that Chaos has exposed them, they'll be famous all over the world. Zhang Yi led Deng Shintong and the others, guided by the Dragon Guardians, to the luxurious guest rooms prepared for them. On the way, Deng Shintong leaned over and said, Bro, you were really ruthless this time. Not only did you beat him up, you also made fun of Li Changgong's mother. I'm afraid he's going to kill you. Zhang Yi snorted coldly, I didn't want to play like that, but he wanted to humiliate me in public, so why should I be polite to him? Deng Shintong shook his head helplessly. But you didn't have to say anything bad about him. I didn't expect you to be so well informed and know about his family. I underestimated you. Zhang Yi and the people around him were shocked when they heard this and looked at Deng Shintong with astonishment. What? What? Zhang Yi scratched his head. I was just angry at him and said something without thinking. Did I really do that? Deng Shintong raised his neck expressionlessly and looked at him sideways. Marriages and families like theirs are all arranged marriages, so there isn't much love between them. After getting married, they can't divorce because of their interests, so they just live separate lives. The situation of the Li family is no secret in our circle. But now, you've revealed the secret. My friend, you're in big trouble. Upon hearing this, Zhang Yi suddenly looked at Deng Shintong with a very strange look. Then your family. Deng Shintong said dismissively, my parents have been divorced for more than 10 years, and I have a stepfather from Britannia. Zhang Yi was stunned, you really have a big heart. You can talk about this so casually? Deng Shintong pointed at his own nose and said with a smile, I was educated abroad, so I'm more open-minded about these things. But, he said with a playful look in his eyes, Li Changgong comes from a military family and cares a lot about face. Just wait until he comes after you.